Ireland. The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Muhammad Yunus, Chief Advisor of the Interim Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. I request Protocol to please escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Madam President, I congratulate all member states on the 80th anniversary of the UN Charter. This session is especially important both for looking back at our journey and for shaping the road ahead. Over the past 8 decades, the UN has steadily expanded its scope of work and deepened its engagement in many areas. It has played an indispensable role in advancing peace and security, in promoting human rights, in improving lives across the world, and in upholding justice, fairness, and equality. Because of the UN, today more than 130 million vulnerable people in 120 countries receive urgent food and humanitarian support. Nearly 45% of the world's children are immunized through its efforts. Its agencies stand by those in distress, delivering food, clean water, sanitation, vaccines, and other life-saving services in every corner of the world. At the same time, we have also witnessed the limitations of the UN in resolving conflicts between states and in confronting major global challenges. Yet, on the whole, its role has been overwhelmingly positive and beneficial for humanity. Madam President, last year, in this August Assembly, I spoke to you from a country that had just witnessed a popular uprising. I shared with you our aspirations for transformation. Today, I stand here to tell you how far we have come on that journey. Out of every 100 people on this planet, nearly 3 live in Bangladesh. But our story is not important because of our numbers, nor because of our geopolitical location. Our story matters because it is a reminder of the extraordinary power of ordinary people. It matters because it inspires hope among nations everywhere that no matter how deep the crisis, no matter how impossible the solution may seem, the path to renewal is never lost. Madam President, Bangladesh was born in 1971 through a bloody struggle for equality, for human dignity, and for social justice. Yet the very rights for which we shed blood so much, the very freedoms for which we sacrificed so much, have been denied again and again over the past 5 decades. Time and again, spearheaded by our youth, the people of Bangladesh have risen, endured sacrifice, and reclaimed those rights. This year, we mark the first anniversary of the July uprising. It was our youth who stood up. It was our youth who defeated tyranny, and it was our youth who opened the path to a new journey of building a just and equal society. The responsibility to carry that vision forward was placed on my shoulders and those of my colleagues. Rebuilding a devastated economy and state demanded nothing less than profound institutional reforms. We could have chosen the easy path, reforms imposed by executive order. But we chose the hard path, reforms built through inclusion and sustained through consensus. We chose the path that endures. Our goal is clear: to create a democratic order where power is balanced, where no autocrat can ever return, where no elected leader can destroy democracy, and where those who are meant to protect the people can never again prey upon them. To realize this vision, we established 11 independent commissions on governance, judiciary, elections, public administration, law enforcement, anti-corruption, women's rights, and other vital areas. These commissions consulted citizens, studied deeply, and produced detailed proposals for reform. To anchor these reforms in permanence, we created a National Consensus Commission, which brought together more than 30 political parties and coalitions. Its aim was simple yet historic: to forge a collective pledge that transcends party line. That effort succeeded. On the first anniversary of July Uprising, we stood together on one stage and announced the July Declaration, a time-bound commitment to reform. That commitment means that no matter who wins the next election, the reform process will not stop, will not reverse, and will not be undone. Now, as we prepare for next elections in February next year, we remain steadfast in carrying forward reforms that place citizens at the center. Our focus is unchanging: transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. Madam President, within weeks of assuming office last year, I invited the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to Bangladesh. The task was clear: to investigate and document human rights violations and atrocities committed by the fallen autocracy. Their team carried out field investigations and submitted a detailed report. Along with their findings, they made important recommendations to ensure that such crimes are never repeated. We have incorporated those recommendations into our national reform process. Even before the last General Assembly session, Bangladesh acceded to the International Convention for Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. We are now drafting necessary legislation to give full effect to its provisions at the national level. This year, we joined the optional protocol to Convention Against Torture, and we are working to establish an independent national mechanism to prevent torture in line with its requirements. To strengthen our transformation from a repressive authoritarian system into a democratic order that protects human rights, we have also authorized a 3-year mission of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Bangladesh. This mission has already begun its work, providing technical support to help us build strong and lasting safeguards. All these steps and commitments reflect the aspirations of our people, and those aspirations are clear: to build a democratic, inclusive, and pluralistic society. Madam President, at the heart of our development strategy lie 3 guiding principles: good governance, social inclusion, and sustainable development. From the bitter lessons of the past decade and a half, we know this truth: without accountability, development is temporary. Without accountability, development is fragile. Infrastructure projects driven by corruption and narrow political interests not only burden the economy, they fail to serve the people. When we assumed responsibility, we uncovered the vast scale of corruption and theft of public resources. and the severe economic vulnerability it had created. We are determined to put an end to this so that development is never again used as an excuse to plunder the wealth of the people. To stabilize the fragile economy, we have taken difficult but necessary reform decisions. Among the most important reform is the revenue collection system. For the first time, legislation has been enacted to separate policy-making body from the implementing authority. This ensures transparency and accountability, and it will expand our revenue base. These measures are fully aligned with the severe commitment adopted at the recent FFD4 conference. Just as Bangladesh is striving to implement reforms in line with the severe commitment, we hope that the developed world will also honor their responsibilities under that collective pledge. We also believe that reform of decision-making and governance in global financial institutions is urgently needed. Equally vital are an inclusive framework for international tax cooperation, coordinated global measures against illicit financial flows and corruption, and stronger international cooperation for the recovery of stolen and illicit assets. Madam President, recovering the illicit assets stolen from our country is now one of our highest priorities. In the past 15 years, billions of dollars were siphoned abroad through corruption. We are working tirelessly to bring this wealth back. Yet, legal processes in the concerned countries and different other obstacles are hurting our efforts. Without sincere political commitment from the countries concerned, we will not be able to recover these assets. The current global financial system has failed to prevent the illicit transfer of resources from developing nations. In some cases, the very rules of international financial institutions have enabled the movement of vast sums of illegal money into tax havens around the world. I call upon those countries and institutions that shelter such stolen assets, do not be complicit in this crime. Return the wealth to its rightful owners, the farmers, the workers, and the ordinary taxpayers. I propose the adoption and enforcement of strong international regulations to prevent the plunder of resources from developing countries and to ensure their return when stolen. Madam President, alongside historic reforms in revenue, we have introduced a market-based exchange rate, brought discipline and stability to the banking sector through asset quality reviews, a new bank resolution ordinance, and a forthcoming deposit protection ordinance. We have modernized capital market oversight with a reformed task force and a strengthened investigative system. In public procurement, e-tendering is now mandatory and conflicts of interest must be disclosed. A new public accounts audit ordinance has reinforced accountability. Our aim is not only financial stability, but also an investment-friendly environment. The Bangladesh single window now integrates 19 agencies to simplify customs procedures. Specialized commercial courts have been established to expedite dispute resolution. The Investment Development Authority has set up a coordination committee to ensure smooth one-stop services, bringing regulators under one roof and easing visa and work permit processes. An FDI heat map and a national semiconductor task force now provide transparent information on high potential sectors. Trade logistics are also improving. Year on year, container handling at Chattogram port grew by 27.6% in August, a striking sign of new efficiency. These initiatives strengthen economic governance and make investment safer. Bangladesh is now entering a new phase of sustainable and inclusive growth. This progress would not have been possible without the extraordinary contribution of our migrant workers. Month after month, they send record remittances home through their hard work abroad. Their contribution is not only vital for Bangladesh, it is equally valuable for host countries, where they provide essential services in high demand. Migration is therefore mutually beneficial, good for us, good for them. We are also advancing human labor rights reforms in line with our commitments. A committee has already been formed to implement the recommendations of the Independent Labor Reform Commission. Amendments to the Bangladesh Labour Act are at the final stage, including easier trade union registration, longer maternity leave, and expanded social protection for workers in both formal and informal sectors. Online trade union registration has been introduced, and further simplification is under review. As a sign of our commitment to workers' rights, we have also signed the Charter of the OIC Labour Centre. For these reasons, we strongly support safe, orderly, and regular migration. We call upon all countries that receive migrant workers to ensure empathy and protection for them. While developed nations struggle with aging populations, Bangladesh is blessed. More than 60% of our people are under the age of 35. If migration pathways are opened, it will be mutually beneficial. By harnessing the strength of our youth, we can help meet labor needs in developed countries while creating opportunities for our own people. Madam President, the young generation of Bangladesh has already shown that they are the driving force of social change. We are investing in their skills in information technology, artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and green innovation. Our goal is clear: to shape every young person not only as a job seeker but also as a job creator. To this end, in partnership with the UN, we are launching a permanent platform to connect young people at the grassroots with senior policymakers of the government. Across the country, consultations have already begun. Today's youth want to be directly connected to their representatives from the local to the national level through online and offline forums, surveys, and campaigns. They demand greater opportunities for leadership, skills development, and digital literacy. They call for accountability in this process with regular progress reports and continuous dialogue. Above all, they insist that the process be inclusive with equal space for women, minorities, persons with disabilities, and marginalized groups. This year is especially significant for youth policy, as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the World Programme of Action for Youth. It is not only a moment to address the challenges of today's young people, but also to anticipate the crisis they will face tomorrow and to begin shaping the solutions. In this fast-changing technological era, one of our deepest concerns is the widening digital divide facing youth in developing world. Quantum computing, artificial intelligence, large language models, modern communication systems, these must not be biased, and their benefits must be shared fairly with all. If not, we risk creating an entire generation who will see themselves as excluded, marginalized, and treated unjustly. Such a generation will be vulnerable to every harmful temptation. We believe that to shield young people from this risk and to spread the benefits of technology to all, technological innovation alone is not enough. We also need social innovation. Almost half a century ago, we introduced the idea of microcredit. It was then a radical experiment against conventional wisdom. Today, it is a globally recognized tool that has lifted millions out of poverty. In the US, for example, Grameen America has disbursed more than $6.2 billion till date to low-income women entrepreneurs with repayment rates close to 100%. Today, in Bangladesh and across the world, we are advancing the idea of social business. It is a form of business where profits are entirely reinvested for social good. Social business has shown that the entrepreneurial spirit of every human being can be harnessed for the welfare of society and the solving of social problems. This gives humanity a creative method to address every challenge, whether environmental degradation, concentration of wealth, healthcare, unemployment, or poverty. It is a path that can be applied and sustained everywhere. Madam President, in confronting the climate crisis, the goal of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius has already slipped beyond our grasp. The annual pledge of $100 billion in climate finance has not been met. Worse still, the small sums that are dispersed are often shown on paper as many times larger than what they really are. This is unacceptable. For the sake of our children's future, we must act now. The Loss and Damage Fund must be made fully operational. Efforts to mitigate climate change must be intensified, but adaptation must be given equal priority, and adaptation must be locally determined, locally led, and locally managed. Bangladesh has already embraced locally led adaptation as a guiding principle. At the upcoming COP30 conference, we will announce our third nationally determined contributions, which will include both mitigation targets and adaptation actions, with special emphasis on protecting mangrove forests and restoring wetlands. At the same time, we expect the global community, particularly the high-emitting countries, to meet their responsibilities with sincerity. Madam President, another great challenge of our time is the rise of protectionism in global trade. In our own lifetimes, we have seen how trade and globalization lifted almost 1 billion people out of poverty in just 3 decades. If we now turn back, our children will lose that opportunity. It is undeniable that in trade, every nation's sovereign interests must be safeguarded, and no country should be forced to bear burdens beyond its capacity. But for the sake of global peace and prosperity, there is no alternative to open, fair, and rules-based trade. We must also expand the role of social business in global trade. A growing share of development assistance must be directed towards spreading social business worldwide. My generation has witnessed how a system of interdependent economies made conflict too costly and helped preserve peace. Today, more than 120 armed conflicts are raging across the globe. If economic interdependence collapses, these conflicts will only multiply, development will falter, and peace itself will be destroyed. Madam President, the ongoing conflict in our neighboring country Myanmar has created a situation of deep concern for the entire region. It threatens not only regional stability, but also the prospects for the safe return of the forcibly displaced Rohingya sheltered in Bangladesh. 8 years on, the Rohingya crisis continues without any solution in sight. Moreover, Bangladesh faces a slow but regular flow of the Rohingyas seeking protection. Evidently, deprivation of rights and persecution of the Rohingya rooted in cultural identity-based politics continue in Rakhine. Reversal of the process of marginalization of the Rohingya cannot wait any further. Most of the discriminatory policies and practices that made them vulnerable can be reversed, and remedial measures can be advanced without waiting for a comprehensive national political settlement in Myanmar. There must be a political solution to the problems in Rakhine involving the ethnic stakeholders there so that the Rohingya become part of the Rakhine society with equal rights as equal citizens. Towards this end, a sustainable repatriation in safety and security must lead the process for restoration of their rights and their ultimate reintegration with dignity. Bangladesh has been drawn into this crisis as the second victim after the persecuted Rohingya. Yet, we must remember that the Rohingya crisis is not a bilateral issue with Myanmar. Bangladesh has been realizing its part of obligation as a responsible neighbor and a committed member of the international community. But our collective goal of maintaining a minimum standard of living in the camps face a situation of potential collapse given the funding crunch. The World Food Programme warns of a critical funding shortfall for its emergency response. Without urgent new funding, monthly ration may have to be halved to a paltry $6 per person, pushing the Rohingya deeper into hunger, accentuating their malnutrition, and forcing them to resort to desperate measures. Further cuts will no doubt intensify protection and security risks, transcending much beyond the camps. Hence, I call upon existing donors and to come forward with enhanced contribution and potential donors to make announcements of generous contribution to prevent this catastrophic situation. The international community, beyond new and enhanced funding for humanitarian assistance, must apply pressure on Myanmar or the non-state actor in Rakhine to bring positive changes there and to seek political solutions urgently. The neighboring countries must assume their responsibilities. Bangladesh will remain available for any assistance or contribution needed towards stabilization of Rakhine that the international community collectively agrees. Bangladesh expects that the upcoming high-level conference on 30 September will galvanize global resolve and generate concrete international support for the Rohingya, with the topmost priority of diversified and additional funding. Parallelly, it must agree on a process with time-bound deliverables as part of a globally accepted roadmap towards seeking permanent solutions to the Rohingya crisis. Madam President, this year, conflicts have scarred almost every corner of the globe, in Europe, in South Asia, and in the Middle East. We live in the most densely populated region of the world. Nowhere else do so many nuclear-armed states exist in such close proximity. That is why we in Bangladesh deeply understand the urgency of disarmament and the prevention of nuclear proliferation. We call for the revival of global arms control treaties that have grown weaker with time. We renew our call for the establishment of nuclear weapon-free zones, particularly in the Middle East and South Asia. At the same time, we reaffirm the right of every nation to use nuclear energy peacefully, with full transparency. As a responsible nation, even before commissioning our first nuclear power plant, Bangladesh this year acceded to the Joint Convention on the Safety of Spent Fuel Management and on the Safety of Radioactive Waste Management under the IAEA. By doing so, we reaffirm our commitment to the highest standards of nuclear safety and transparency. Madam President, I have always spoken the language of hope. I have never believed in frightening people into action, but today I must depart from that habit, for the truth before us is frightening. I must warn, extreme nationalism, geopolitics that thrive on suffering of others, and indifference to human pain are destroying the progress humanity has built through decades of struggle. Nowhere is this tragedy more visible than in Gaza. Children are dying of hunger, civilians are being killed without distinction. Entire neighborhoods, including hospitals and schools, are being wiped from the map. We do agree with the UN Independent International Inquiry Commission that we are witnessing a genocide happening live. Unfortunately, on behalf of the humanity, we are not doing enough to stop it. If this continues, neither future generations nor history will forgive us. On behalf of the people of Bangladesh and of conscientious citizens across the world, I once again make a strong appeal. The two-state solution must be implemented now through the establishment of an independent state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital. Only on the basis of the pre-1967 borders, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace, can justice be done. Madam President, in Bangladesh, we believe that we must build a culture of peace, one that rests on the values of tolerance, non-violence, dialogue, and cooperation at every level of society. For more than 3.5 decades, Bangladesh has stood among the leading contributors of UN peacekeepers. This is living proof of our enduring commitment to global peace and security. Even today, nearly 6,000 Bangladeshi peacekeepers are serving in some of the world's most volatile regions under the UN flag. And 168 of our peacekeepers have made the ultimate sacrifice in line of duty. Research has consistently shown that UN peacekeeping missions are more sustainable and effective than unilateral interventions. We therefore call for clear and achievable mandates and adequate funding for peacekeeping operations. We must also give the highest priority to the safety of peacekeepers and ensure accountability for crimes committed against them. Bangladesh also actively promotes multilingualism, both at home and internationally, because we believe that linguistic and cultural diversity deepens mutual understanding. In the 21st century, there is no place for hatred, intolerance, racism, xenophobia, or Islamophobia in any society. Yet today, disinformation and hate speech have become matters of grave concern. In the aftermath of the last year's popular uprising in Bangladesh, certain vested groups deliberately spread false narratives, and such disinformation continues even now. The problem has been compounded by the deliberate use of fake news and artificial intelligence-driven deepfakes, which make the situation even more dangerous. We must work together to confront these distortions before they erode trust among people and weaken the bonds of social harmony. Madam President, one of our top priorities is the empowerment of women. In the words of our national poet Qazi Nazrul Islam, whatever in this world is great, whatever is good and everlasting, half of it has been created by women and the other half by men. In reality, In many important fields today, the contribution of women is greater than half. This month, for the first time, Bangladesh published the Unpaid Household Production Satellite Account. It shows that women perform more than 85% of unpaid care and household work, with a value equivalent to over 16% of our GDP. Despite many obstacles, our girls are succeeding everywhere, from classrooms to boardrooms, from laboratories to sports fields. Recently, our women's football team won a regional championship, qualified for the Inter-Asian competition, and inspired millions across the country. My government's efforts to ensure women's safety, dignity, and equal opportunity continue. This year, we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration. On this occasion, we have strengthened our commitment to women's empowerment by announcing 4 national pledges under the Beijing Plus 30 Action Agenda to be implemented in the next 5 years. They include enacting a law to prevent and protect against sexual harassment, recognizing and valuing women's unpaid care and household work, increasing women's participation in politics and public life, and strengthening gender-responsive budgeting. Madam President, Bangladesh is committed to regional cooperation based on mutual respect, transparency, and shared prosperity. Through initiatives such as BIMSTEC, BBIN, Asian Highway, SASEC, we are advancing regional connectivity and trade. At the same time, we have expressed interest in joining effective regional forums like ASEAN, and we are working toward that goal. We also call for the revitalization of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC. Established 4 decades ago, SAARC achieved notable progress in its early years and laid a strong foundation for regional cooperation. Despite political deadlock, its institutional structure remains intact. We believe SAARC still holds the potential to deliver welfare to the hundreds of millions in our region, just as ASEAN has done in its own. For shared development, there is no alternative to regional cooperation among neighbors. And when it comes to the use of shared natural resources, fairness and compassion must guide us. Bangladesh is firmly committed to peaceful regional cooperation in this area. That is why, as the first country in South Asia, we have recently joined the UN Water Convention. Madam President, centuries of political exploitation, plunder of resources, and structural inequalities have created today's stark realities of uneven development. A decade ago, when we agreed on the 2030 agenda, we were filled with hope that the world would change course and move toward the right path. Yet the reality today is sobering. Progress toward the SDGs has fallen dangerously behind. The gap in development financing continues to grow, while the flow of official development assistance is shrinking. We urge donor countries to reverse this trend and to honor their commitments. We are in the process of graduating from the category of least developed countries to that of developing countries. Enhanced cooperation from the international community, in particular the relevant entities of the UN, is essential to ensure a smooth and sustainable transition. In this regard, we commend the work of OHRLLS and other relevant UN entities. We call for further strengthening of this office to enable more effective support to the LDCs and other vulnerable countries. At the same time, alongside grants and loans, we call for a massive expansion of social business through both public and private initiatives. This new approach can bring benefit to both donor and recipient countries alike. It can inspire, it can encourage, and it can take human creativity to new heights. Madam President, we acknowledge the contribution of UN to Bangladesh's progress and development. We reaffirm our full confidence in its three pillars: peace and security, development, and human rights. At the beginning of my statement, I said that over the past 8 decades, the UN has shown time and again that multilateral diplomacy helps humanity live together in greater harmony. Yet, on its 80th anniversary, we must acknowledge that multilateral diplomacy is under strain. The tensions of unequal bilateral relations have once again proved that multilateralism remains our last and best resort. To keep the UN, the custodian of multilateralism, alive and vibrant, we call for full transparency and sincere dialogue among member states. The United Nations must continue to evolve and adapt if it is to meet today's challenges and fulfill our collective aspiration for multilateralism. In this spirit, we welcome the Secretary General's UN 80 initiative, but we must also insist reform must not weaken multilateralism or silence the voices of developing countries. Reform must have one goal only: to bring about real and positive change on the ground. Madam President, last year, our people proved that injustice in this world is not eternal. They proved that change is not only possible, it is inevitable. We must remember that the challenges ahead cannot be met by any single country alone. And we must also remember that in today's world, where one nation falls into crisis, when crisis erupts in one corner of the globe, the security of the whole world is put at risk. We must move forward with the dream of building a world of 3 zeros. Our young generation will grow as the soldiers of that dream. Before them will stand 3 goals: zero carbon, zero wealth concentration, and zero unemployment. On this foundation, they will build their world. Let the dream of a 3-0 world be the dream of all nations united in this assembly. With this hope, I conclude my statement. I thank you all.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Chief Advisor of the Interim Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh.